Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Edmund, for the nice introduction. Yeah, he's warning me about the 15 minutes because as a Frenchman, we tend to speak a lot for a long time. In fact, I want to do a little parenthesis before starting because indeed you mentioned what Mr. Ratti was saying yesterday from the MIT laboratory, and he said, we should not overvalue the importance of technology. And we, as Homo sapiens, since 70,000 years ago, we're no longer influenced by genetic mutations, but really by our culture, by our beliefs, by ideas. And this is what drives our societies, even more so than technology. Technology is definitely a tool enabling us, but at the end, what makes people move essentially is ideas, culture, beliefs. The other point I want to say first, and I maybe should have started with this, Hong Kong is very fortunate to have the Hong Kong Design Council. It's a unique organization. Design Center, sorry. Hong Kong Design Center, yeah. It's a unique organization in the world where we are able to, I learned so much over the last day and a half. And I had to come to Hong Kong to learn so many things about design and creativity and the mixing of competence and skills. And I just want to say this because the authorities sometimes they don't realize the importance of such institutions. And I would love to have such an institution in Europe that gather all those brilliant minds from throughout the world. So I mentioned Mr. Ratti's intervention yesterday. I also wanted to question, or maybe challenge what has been said yesterday about the ranking of cities. I was thinking about, I love the city where I'm living in. And the city is dirty. It's not well managed. It's disorganized. It's chaotic. And indeed, a lovable city is something that is very subjective. But I like the city because it's very convivial. It's very creative. It's very sociable. It's very internationally minded. And I'm not only talking about, well-dressed international people, but also a lot of migrants, from Turkey, from North Africa, and so on. And I think this aspect makes a city livable and attractive. And if you ask Europeans actually where they would want to live, they would never tell you, I want to live to Vienna or to Munich or to Zurich. Okay, they're well organized, they're, German spirit-led, well structured and all that. But they would say, we want the sun, we want the beach, good food, and nice people. And this doesn't come out in the surveys of the economists and other surveys. So maybe they should look a bit further onto their indicators. But let's go back. So I'm, as I said earlier, we are policy designers in cultural creative industries. We advise mainly cities, a lot in Europe, but also we have been working a lot in the regions. We've been advising the Shenzhen government, the city that is just above there, which is an interesting case, and I will come back to this, because one of the elements of Shenzhen becoming international city is about how can we make our city attractive? And how does culture and creative economy play a role in making a city like Shenzhen attractive? So our outreach, this is, I think, what's the beauty of Europe is that you can, and the European Union, you can pick up a lot of different experiences stemming from different cities. We don't have, we have obviously big capitals like Paris, London, Amsterdam, Berlin, and so on, but also we have a lot of medium-sized cities that are developing their economy through investment in culture and creative industries. And I'd like to share with you a project we have been managing for 3 years for the European Union, which was about understanding and extracting good practices of cities at a European level and enabling peer learning exchange or peer review exchange between those cities in actually developing a creative ecosystem and enabling the development of culture and creative industries in those cities. It's interesting because the driver in Europe for investment in culture and creative industries stem from the economic crisis. How do we recreate economic activity in Europe whilst most of the manufacturing base, industrial base went to Asia or to other parts of the world? And so how do we retain talents? How do we live that enables young people to stay in the European cities? How do we also a new problematic? How do we welcome migrants? You know, we have a big migration problem in Europe, and a lot is perceived that culture and creative industries can help in addressing those issues. So it's no longer about, you know, managing cultural institutions or supporting the art sectors, or which is traditional cultural policy, or attracting tourists. It's going much further. It's about addressing social innovation. It's about addressing economic development, as well as attracting tourists and so on. So a lot of speakers mentioned the fact that our world is changing, and indeed our world is changing in terms of the way we consume, the way the industry is organized, the way we behave. And actually, the good example was yesterday with Green Monday. A good example of how people are no longer looking to simply be consumer, but they want to be part of a project. They want to find in the act of consumption some meaning, some sense. They want to be part of a community. When they are entrepreneurs, they don't necessarily want to look for profits or make a lot of money, but they want to give back something to the community. They want to become social entrepreneurs. And this is a big shift that is actually very much led by cities. The cities are drivers of this big shift because they are enabling those people to meet through co-creation spaces, through creative hubs, through incubators. And cities have become kind of laboratory and experimenting spaces where experimentation is taking place, welcoming and attracting those cultural and creative talents. And this is where the world is changing in this respect. Our role as advisor to cities is make them aware of those cultural resources that very often they discount as something being marginal. But those cultural resources is well understood first, can be used to trigger innovation in a place, in a city, in a country, wherever. And for instance, I was referring to Shenzhen. Shenzhen is an interesting city. It didn't exist 30 years ago. You know, what are the cultural resources of Shenzhen? And the idea was to help the government in Shenzhen to say, okay, your cultural resources are maybe your people that come from all over China and now come from all over the world. And how do you mine this diversity of culture from Asia, from China, and from the rest of the world in order to develop the DNA and make the city authentic? Something we didn't refer yet. Everything about cities' livability is about authenticity. And referring back to culture, the art, the artist, the heritage, is a way of finding what makes you different. Why do people like Hong Kong compared to other cities? It's because of this environment and those cultural resources. So it's important to be aware of them and make use of those resources for different transformation, because investing in culture is investing in transformation. And today what we observe in European cities is that actually culture is everywhere. So it's no longer limited to, as I said before, tourism, heritage protection, but actually it is used to urban development, through art, street art, through establishing a creative hub in a place where there was formerly a factory that is abandoned. It is a way of generating innovation by putting artists, which are the disruptor by excellence. We're talking about a lot of disruption. Designers are disruptors, but artists are great disruptors. So how do you create their skills and competence in disruption into the ecosystem of innovation and make them part of the innovation aspect? So I've already been told it's 5 minutes left. So what I want to say is that the cultural people, the artists, are the movers and shakers in cities today. So often they ignore it themselves, but you are policymakers. You have to take this into consideration as a way of triggering innovation, is getting those movers and shakers active for your city, helping transforming your city. I'll keep these slides here because in Europe we've seen a big transformation. We were lucky to do 7 years ago a big study for the European Union on the economic power of culture and creative industries. And it came out that actually this sector is bigger than car manufacturing and chemical industry. And it became an eye-opener for politicians and say, wow, this is... But very often this industry is very difficult to localize. It's very small, it's not so well organized, it's not very good in lobbying of government officials and so on. And what happened in all policy sectors of the European Union, now a lot of money is being diverted to the culture and the creative sector because they see this as a way of supporting innovation. Whereas before the whole sector of innovation was about, let's give money to the technology sectors, They are going to sort it out for us. And the idea is that there cannot be innovation if you don't, and I think this was the speech all over the 2 days, whether it's not human-centered and linked to actually what humans are looking for. Another lesson of our experiment in Europe is that, as I said before, also the culture and creative sector is very disorganized. It's very atomized because it's made of a lot of individuals that are very creative, but they have problems working together, and therefore they are not very. They don't have the capacity to really influence government. And this is why Hong Kong Design Center is a very important organization because it helps the sector to express itself and say what is the environment, regulatory environment that enable us to thrive, to develop as entrepreneurs, to create employment, to participate in social, in healthcare innovation and so on. And so it is very important to help the sector get organized and be more influential. And the point also is very important. We have a strong tradition in Europe of cultural policy, and it's very much state-led. Some governments are giving a lot of money to culture development as part of education, as part of obviously also raising the nationhood and so on. But we have seen a shift over the last 10 years where the main drivers are the cities, because indeed they know that setting a creative ecosystems, attracting entrepreneurs, helping creative entrepreneurs is key for the city to continue to exist. Is key for the city to develop its image, to be attractive, not only to tourists, but to investors, to be attractive to talents, for talents to remain, but also to talents to come here. We're talking about, Berlin is all image. Berlin, there are no industry. It's all about creative talents, art galleries, and so on. You're talking about Barcelona. You're talking about Austin, Texas, US. Nobody knew about Austin, Texas in US 10 years ago. Now, South by Southwest, the festival had made Austin the place to be. What makes Hong Kong different from Shenzhen? It's the cultural offer of Hong Kong, still. It may change in 5 or 10 years' time, But this is what makes people internationally more attracted maybe to Hong Kong than Shenzhen today. But Shenzhen is catching up, and the authorities know that if they are not providing a good cultural offer, a good creative ecosystem, they will lose out to the international competition with other cities. So kind of the recommendations we're making to policymakers is obviously leadership is very important. It's understanding your cultural resources. More importantly is to entrust, to empower people that are capable of disruption, to entrust, to empower cultural workers, to entrust, to empower designers, artists, because they bring a new way of looking at the cities. They enable the city to be convivial, to create empathy, to support social interactions. The bar culture. We're talking about New York, you were talking about New York, and Bloomberg said actually it's the creative talents attract capital. Bloomberg saying this, the former mayor of New York. Then remind me, the role of the factory, Andy Warhol, jazz, into the setting up of New York and the image of New York. So this is the role of culture and creative industries in enabling. Then that thinking innovation beyond technology, to attract the skills and competence. We're talking about creative spillover of those of those artists, creative people, and make them participate in innovation. I think this is very important, the linking pins, the people that actually can mediate between the business, between policymakers, and those strange creators, which are artists. And we will get probably a linking pin in a few moments in our speech. Wow, I managed, Edward. My time is up, and I'm finished. Thanks very much.
Right, stay here. Philip. Philip. Oh, thank you. Just the quick questions. Before we go in, you talk about the risk of return or the return on investments of the cultural industries, right? And what is the status right now? Because there's a lot of government, to public interest, policy interest. We put in money, to support, creative and design industry development. And how do you measure ROI?
Yeah, the problem of measurement is an issue in the sector. And yesterday, actually, we were talking about data, usage of data. And this is one of the issues which makes that this sector is a bit marginalized by policymakers, because very often they cannot really understand the contribution. And the sector is very bad at documenting actually its impact and its efforts. But we did recently, there is this concept in Europe called the European Capital of Culture. And we did an impact assessment of the 70 million euro investment made by a small city of 100,000 inhabitants in Belgium. And we were able to show that the 1 euro invested produced 5.5 euro direct investment in the overall economy, not only in the city, but actually in the country. And so more and more those type of measurements are coming up, and cities are developing indicators because they know that they have also to show to citizens that it is valuable to invest in culture. Because very often, let's be frank, a lot of citizens question, why do we put money in culture and not in hospitals or in social services? And there was actually recently in Belgium a survey, and it showed that the citizens were ranking the last position, the cultural investment, because they don't realize what cultural investment brings in terms of people feeling better. It was a city where 27% unemployment. Before, the people were saying, oh, who wants to come to our shitty city, spend a cultural year? And after this, people changed completely their mind. Wow, there are so many people came to see us, Okay. We are living in a great place. So these are the type of measurement that we need to incorporate in policy making.
Yeah, while you go back down, and join the rest of the panel speaker talk, do think about, some of the growth mindsets, the making of and the measurements. We'll go a little bit more into the panel discussion in a minute.